I don't have a Windows Phone anymore, but listen, there's a reason that a blogger or anyone with anything timely to do in the world cannot use a Windows computer anymore. Because I don't know when the last time you've used a Windows computer, but Windows 8, which is a really fantastic operating system when it's working, um, it's off the charts awesome when it works, but when it doesn't work, it literally just updates all the time. And as opposed to like a Mac computer, which will tell you that you have to update, and will be like, okay, and you can choose to update then, or an hour later, or be reminded tomorrow. A Windows computer, when you turn it on, if it has to update, it just updates. So I'm sitting here, and it goes through 12%, 14%, 18%. Like, oh my God. So that's why I tweeted out my picture of it just saying, please wait, as if I had some sort of choice in the matter, as if I could sit there and decide whether or not to wait or not. Yeah.
So when I get a new computer, should I get the new Windows Touch computer, or should I get an iMac?
I think you got to go for a Mac computer, because this would never happen with a Mac. Mike's computer, if you haven't noticed, is the best of all of ours, and it's the clearest.
I love my MacBook Pro.
Yeah, I was the one who suggested you get it, and I'm an idiot because I was suckered by a Windows computer. I thought I could just put a big machine here that would be like a workstation. That this is like a fast, big ass computer, and it just blows. Is it
a touch computer? Like one of the new touch
computer. It's a big laptop. It's a giant. It's like a 17. It's got enormous amounts of power. And it should be swinging fast as hell, and it just does this to me all the friggin' time. It sits there and it decides that it's going to update, and you can't do that when you have a story breaking. You're like, I can't sit here and wait for this thing to update.
Yeah.
Anyway. Third world problems, I know, but I'm just, first world problems. Sorry, I mean, not third.
My only issue is, what about all my files that are on Windows? I can't put them on my Mac, can I?
Sure, you can.
What kind of files are you talking about?
I mean, are you talking about Word and Excel?
Like Word and Excel, yeah.
Yeah,
no, they run off Mac, yeah.
You just get Microsoft Office for Mac.
Yeah.
They have that now?
Oh yeah.
Yep.
They've had that for years.
And what about Adobe?
Yep. Flash player, everything is on Mac. I mean, like I said, I got my MacBook Pro a little over a year ago. Had absolutely no problems with it.
Yeah.
I think the only problem that I had is when I updated the operating system. There was a nice feature on Microsoft Office where you could like dictate to the just talking to a microphone, and it would type out things. When it updated, it
Mac does that now. You know this, Mike, right?
What's that?
You know how to do that on You know how to do that on your computer?
Go ahead, Josh.
Pavel Datsuk out 4 to 5 weeks with a separated shoulder.
Shocking. Shocking.
And the hits just keep on coming.
No, you'll have to show me Yak, about that later on.
It's the left-hand button on the Mac, the bottom left.
Yeah,
okay, it's like a function button. If you hit it twice, like bang bang, you can auto dictate. And what I do, how I write my stories now, which might be why I don't have as many errors as I used to. I still have errors, but not as many. Is what I actually do, and I found this is the best way to blog. Sit there and hit function, dictate it in. It's pretty good. I mean, of course, you fix little things as it goes. And then read it over. But the cool thing about it is, as you're dictating it in, you'll catch the mistakes. You won't miss the mistakes. And then when you read it over again, it's like double proofreading it. How I do it.
It was great when it worked, but the problem is when the operating system updated and you hit FN twice, the microphone stopped coming up. I took it to the Apple.
Really?
Yeah, I took it to the Apple place. They had a biatch of a time finding out what the problem was, and then when the operating system updated again, it just disappeared again. So
I see.
I can't keep going back to their
I hear you. And to those
second degree shoulder separation.
Let's start the show.
Yeah.
This, by the way, is the actual color of my hair. I just happened to readjust my lights, and now my hair looks blonde. But
Come on, I thought you went to the hairdresser.
I have not. This is actually this is the color of my hair. But what's going on is I put a light up higher, and now my head is illuminated. So I look.
That trip for me would be wasted.
I now look like I am brilliant. head's getting cut off a little bit. I look like I have this brilliant glow of my head. 1 second.
Yes. Okay, it is Wednesday, September 24th.
Yep, it is. And I'm back in America. All right, here we go. That's all I'll say about that. Hey, Hockey World. It's Wednesday, September 24th, 2014.
I'm Michael Agello.
I'm Josh Rimmer.
I'm Eklund, and you're watching the Hockey Buzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. I realized that eating tomato soup before the show has made my lips immensely red. Anyway, yes, welcome back, guys, to the, if you're listening, you probably wouldn't understand that. Sorry.
Mine are green.
Yeah. So yes, so welcome back.
Mine are the regular color because I'm not eating.
Yes, I know. I shouldn't eat tomato soup directly before the show like I did, but man, that's my problem. Let's move on though. We have some news, Josh, and unfortunately today is all about injuries. Today is the medical reports brought to you by Josh Rimmer and Afrin. So go ahead.
And State Farm is there. Pavel Datsyuk, separated shoulders, we talked about yesterday. Seems like, well, actually, Kenny Holland saying that he's out 4 to 5 weeks with a second-degree shoulder separation. Also, the big news today in New York Ranger camp is Derek Stepan, who has a fractured fibula and is expected to miss anywhere, I guess, from, a month to 2 months maybe? Yeah. Apparently, 20 to 25 games is what a lot of the media is speculating in New York. The number one center in New York on the shelf. And the weird thing is, guys, is it's not like he got hit like Datsyuk did. He actually fell during a conditioning camp. I don't know if that means he's out of shape or not, but he fell. And then last night, Jordan Stahl took a big hit last night, and he has a what is it? I'm trying to. He has a broken leg, which he got hit by one of the players last night, and I guess went awkwardly. Sorry?
In Buffalo.
In Buffalo, yeah, and he went awkwardly, I guess, into the person and broke his leg. So, yes, less than 24 hours, we have 3 big injuries to talk about, guys who are very important to the team. The interesting thing here is in New York, me and Mike were talking about this before you jumped on, is the fact that Kevin Hayes might have picked correctly here because the number one center was Stepan. Kevin Hayes plays the wing, but he also played center against the Devils the other night, and we could see Kevin Hayes now getting some top 6 minutes. Looks like Hayes might have actually picked a good team to go to.
That's a good point. It's a really good point. I mean, Hayes, my gosh, I mean the Rangers, and also I think this doesn't hurt Ryan Malone's chances of making the team either. We already talked about Malone being I think he's probably going to make the team, but this definitely helps it for sure. It's a shame though. I mean, Derek Stepan is such a great player, and in my mind, one of the top 3 Rangers players moving forward. And when you think about the Rangers, had a lot of their success though last year without him. I mean, he was hurt a lot in the playoffs last year, and didn't come in and turn it. So they can play without him. The Rangers are built to be able to play without him, but they really don't want to. Obviously, it's a tough spot. Other injuries, Pavel Datsyuk. We've got news there too, Josh, right?
Yeah, well, as I mentioned, Pavel Datsyuk, a separated shoulder. He's out anywhere from 4 to 5 weeks, according to Kenny Holland.
What I'm wondering, Eck, is with these 3 injuries, which of the 3 is going to have the most effect on their particular team? And to look at the Rangers, I mean, I do think there are enough players there. They can, as Josh was saying, move Hayes into the middle. Move Derek Brassard up. Dominic Moore can play a bigger role.
Ryan Malone could get a deal too here, guys.
Exactly.
Yeah, but Malone's not a center. We're talking about the
winger.
No,
Yeah.
but Kevin Hayes was slotted as a winger, but now he can move to the center, and that opens a spot for Ryan Malone.
Right, but in terms of their depth up the middle, I mean, they could. I don't know if Zuccarello can play up the middle. That might be a possibility as well. I think Datsuk, the loss of Datsuk for at least a month is the biggest injury because that team.
But are you surprised, Mike? Like, are you surprised? Like, Datsuk can't stay healthy.
No.
We said that yesterday.
No, I'm not surprised at all. I mean, I'm telling you that team has feet of clay. You've got Datsuk, who's 37. You have Zetterberg, who's in his mid-30s. Franzen, I believe, is around 30 years old. That team has been falling apart for the last couple of years. Jimmy Howard has a lot of injury problems. I think it was a fallacy for anybody to think that these guys would stay healthy. And they lost their leading scorer in Daniel Albertson. So did I expect this? Sure. Did I expect it yesterday? No.
I don't agree there completely that that's the worst player. I mean, by the way, we're all idiots because, as Evan pointed out in the chat room, Ryan Malone did already sign a deal.
That's right.
And remember he signed that 2 year. He signed a two-way deal. We were all impressed by the fact he signed a deal that was two-way deal. So anyway, that's my bad. Getting a little confused here.
Me too.
To do. But
I'm an idiot too.
But Datsuk is obvious. I mean, Datsuk is a stud, no question about it, right? But at the bottom of the line, I think that's not going to change whether or not the Red Wings make the playoffs as much as I think Jordan Stahl's injury hurts. I think Jordan Stahl's injury is bigger. That's my opinion. I think that the Carolina Hurricanes are in a bad spot right now. They're right in that middle area where they're not good enough to make the playoffs and they're not bad enough to get a good draft pick. Perhaps this sends them into the other side. Maybe they'd be better off, having a down year here.
They're in the Connor McDavid sweepstakes now, Ak. I mean, I really think so. I mean, I didn't think they were a realistic chance to make the playoffs, even with Jordan Stahl. Now, if he's out for a couple months and they slump early, then I think that they could be in line. And then and Eric Stahl is still not 100%. He's had his injury problems over the last couple of years. So, yeah, they're in deep trouble.
The interesting thing here, guys, is the fact that in the last 24 hours, these three guys, can you name the two similarities between the three?
They're all centers.
Yep. And they're all from the East.
Well, Eastern Conference players, it's true.
Three Eastern centers down. And then you think of the injuries that are going on right now. Bozak in Toronto, center. Malkin in Pittsburgh, center. I don't know if there's a trend going on here.
The severity of those injuries. I mean, there is a difference between Bozak is supposed to play on Friday in Buffalo. Malkin is being basically held out for precautionary reasons. You're talking about broken bones. I mean, this is not like, oh, we're just going to hold him out because he's got a tweak. This is something that's going to keep these players out for months. So, these are serious injuries and possibly, a franchise affecting in terms of them making the postseason. I mean, I think that a team like the Rangers can overcome the loss of Stepan. I'm not sure about Detroit. I agree with X's point on Carolina. I think that they were in trouble even before Jordan Stahl got hurt. Now, with a new coach, with a new direction, and now with Jordan Stahl out, there you go.
Yeah, I mean, it helps them down the line, but then again, you got to draft well, you got to make these good choices, so it's hard. I mean, and they're also a team that really can't. They need to sell tickets. They need to get things going. They can't afford to just have a year that they blow off to get. They're not in a Buffalo scenario where they can actually play that way, and the fans will be patient. I mean, the fans in Carolina are phenomenal, no questions asked, but they do expect things. I mean, you're listening to Ron Francis talk, in the off season here. There's pressure on them to get things done. They're not going to sit there and be patient.
Well, I'm not saying they're purposely going to do it, Ak. I mean, I think they're going to try.
Of course, I know. I agree with you. It just hits them worse, in my opinion, because of all those factors.
It's the hand that may have been dealt to them.
Yes.
Yeah. Now here's the other thought now with those three centers going down, do those teams start looking at maybe some of the guys that still haven't signed yet that are on the sidelines, like a Michael Handzus or, God forbid I say, Scott Gomez. Jeff Halpern's out there. There's still some decent centers out there that could help. Zen Konopka's not a top guy, but I think that some of those guys that I had said before can definitely help a team. Loktinov is still out there as well, and he was with the Carolina Hurricanes before. Maybe Carolina brings him back.
What about it?
What I heard so far, what I heard last night, right after this happened, almost instantly after this happened, was we knew that Chicago was shopping Oduya. We talked about not shopping him, but we're listening to offers. Shopping is a wrong word to use there. And also that they were very interested in moving Versteeg, who they've been trying to move as well. And immediately last night when I heard somebody say that those two teams had started talking almost instantly. Now, I think there could be a good chance here, that we see something happen with Chicago and Carolina, perhaps because Carolina needed a defenseman as well. So this could actually maybe Oduya and Versteeg to Carolina make some sense for the Hurricanes right now. Versteeg he played, and when he was in Philly, he played both center and wing. So I'm trying to think if he's a natural center.
Primarily a winger,
Primarily a winger, but he did play some center here in Philly. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, most NHL players played center at some point in their lives. Right. Very few of them were natural wings. I think if you were to take a survey, probably 2/3 of the players drafted in the NHL were drafted in as centers and either moved to the wing or very few are just born wingers. So maybe there's another player in Carolina that shifts in the center and Versteeg goes to the wing. Either way, but I think that's what I think. That's where I think they'll go. It would make some sense for them to bring Whitney in, obviously, because he's got the history there, and he's got he's got he loved it there. He won.
Has he played center as well?
Yeah, he has, but not a lot. He's more of a winger, but he's not incapable of playing center. I think that they have other players too, and I think the bigger key here is just that they need to replace the offense. They need to replace the offense that Jordan Staal gives.
I mean, you have young guys like Yuri Toulouse was drafted as he can play center and wing. Elias Lindholm, their first round pick from a couple years ago, is a natural center. He may be the one that moves up into that number 2 center position that Staal was playing. And then a guy like a Whitney or I don't know where Dustin Penner is in the mix of things. I don't know if I didn't hear anything about him getting a PTO with any team, but I'm surprised that if he hasn't been that that some team out there isn't interested in bringing him in. And what I'm wondering, and we heard these rumors a little bit during the summer. Does the injury to Stepan and him being out for a significant period of time, does that spring up the Joe Thornton to New York rumors?
Yeah, it would. And also, does this open up a spot for the Flyers to move Vinny LeCavier, as someone put in the chat room?
Yeah, you know what? I don't know if the Flyers would be interested in, or if the Flyers would be willing to trade inside their division. Maybe they would with the albatross of a contract that LeCavier's is. But you have San Luis there and Malone there, players that he played with in Tampa Bay. That might not be a bad fit.
Can you imagine? I just can't imagine the Flyers making a deal with the Rangers. It seems virtually impossible. LeCavier looked really good in his first game too. I mean, the fact is he seems to be a lot healthier this year. I think he can actually bring something to the table. Last year I don't think he was ever healthy. Personally, it just looked like he never had the strength last year. But yeah, I mean Detroit, or Carolina, those are possibilities. That's a really interesting one. There was a rumor that came out yesterday. I guess TSN and TSN's Darren Dreger and Bob McKenzie were doing a preview on the Winnipeg Jets. I don't know if you guys saw this or not. Mm-hmm. And where they said that they were talking about Evander Kane a little bit, and then the quote was, he needs to be a happy member of the team, he needs to be a productive member of the team, and if not, then the Winnipeg Jets need to make a move. Now, I believe the Winnipeg Jets, this is McKenzie speaking, did look seriously at their options of trading Kane over the summer, that there were conversations with a number of teams, not the least of which was the Philadelphia Flyers, and that there was something very close to happening, but it didn't happen. And this is from McKenzie. Who was obviously as trusted as you can get, in the sport. So all I can say is this, of all the teams that I talk to, one I feel like I'm most connected to is the Flyers, and we talked a lot about Evander Kane, and they really weren't interested. when I talked this summer. Now, whether or not things can change. Maybe they made an offer that was like, wow, the Flyers. I mean, the Flyers were it's not like they wouldn't take Evander Kane, but they weren't interested in what the prices were happening. To say it was close to happening, I think is a little bit. I think it was closer to happening in New York than it was here. That's what I heard, and even in Boston. But
I would be surprised, Deck, if the talks between the Flyers and the Jets didn't have to do with the other Jet rather than Evander Kane.
Well, yeah, I mean that did happen. Although the Dustin Byfuglien situation has gotten more and more intriguing as time's gone on, based on who's been in Philly. There have been different people who have left and come and gone, and Byfuglien is a very polarizing figure in general, and there are some people who are really for him and some people are really, really not. I haven't gotten the impression Hextall is as high on him as Holmgren was, and I haven't heard much about Byfuglien since Hexy took over. I personally would love to see Byfuglien in Philly, but so I don't know. I think Evander Kane is. I'm not saying the Flyers. There was a time, and again, this is Holmgren more interested in Evander Kane than Hextall, same sort of way. There was a time when the Flyers definitely had a serious amount of interest in Evander Kane. I don't think that was this summer, but maybe I missed something. It's very possible. There are definitely a lot of possibilities, and things happen all the time, and I am not going to question Bob McKenzie at all.
No.
I'm just talking about what I heard, for what it's worth. All right, so last night the Flyers. Let's go through some preseason games. We have some highlights of some pretty good highlights from last night's games. First off, we have Toronto and Philly starting there because for obvious reasons we have a lot of Toronto and Philly people on our panel here. JVR's goal.
Oh.
I mean, there's a lot to talk. Let me get this up here. Yep, crazy goal. Here it comes. Let's see if I can see if this works. It's not playing.
Van Riemsdyk has mastered his deft touch really close to the net. He's in the last year or so, especially. On this play, you can see he roofs it. He's on the goal line. He roofs it past Mason, hits the top corner with just a little flick of the wrists. He's been doing that. He's been doing a certain move on the power play where he sort of goes inside out, spins around, and gets the puck in front of the net and beats the goaltender. He's very, very good close in. He's big enough that he isn't getting pushed off the puck, and he's fast enough with his size that he keeps the defenders on edge. He scored 30 goals last year. They're talking about moving him down to a second line to sort of diversify their offense, and he played last night with Joffrey Lupul moving over to the right side. So he looked really good as opposed to a guy like Kessel who didn't really show up. It's a preseason game. These guys are veterans. They're not going to show up for all these games. They're probably going to take it easy and not put the pedal to the metal. The talk last night was mostly about Leafs first-round pick William Nylander.
Yeah.
Who scored the last goal in the final minute of the third period. I don't know if you have the video on that one, but
try to find it.
Yeah, it's funny because he's an 18-year-old kid. He's got a lot of talent, a lot of skill. The big question is whether he will have the durability to stay in the NHL. I mean, this is the thing that's happening with him right now is the same thing that happened with Nazem Kadri 3 or 4 years ago in his draft year when he lit it up in training camp, but he just simply wasn't big enough and good enough defensively to make it. And then if you look at Kadri's career, he's still not good enough defensively. Nylander, I think, is going to end up going back to the Swedish Hockey League, but they're going to play him 4 or 5 games. Dave Nonis was on the radio yesterday and said they're going to play him 4 or 5 games, play him with skill players, and let's see what happens. But I would be shocked if he stays in the NHL this year. I think he's going back to Sweden.
Yeah, it seems that way from what I've heard, and I like him though. I mean, the Leaf fans have an exciting future with this kid, and this brings up a point I want to talk about later as we go, because there's a really interesting debate going on among some of the GMs right now about the rules regarding sending kids back to juniors and whether or not that if a guy has played 3 years of juniors already, perhaps that should make him eligible for the NHL. And the situation right now is going on basically in Phoenix. We can jump to that in a second, but we'll get back to that. I think Nylander does look a little bit like he could add some size for sure. I wouldn't want to rush him yet. But at the same time, man, oh man, that kid's got crazy talent. Like his dad had crazy talent. His dad had head issues. It doesn't seem like kid seems like his head's screwed on pretty well right now. Still early though.
Well, I mean, the media has noticed that he doesn't have a problem with confidence, and that's a good problem to have, I guess, in some instances with the NA, with a player in a professional sport, not being short of confidence, but
especially scorers. I mean, your scorer has to be that way.
Yeah, he's grown up around the NHL because his dad was at numerous places throughout the league. He grew up in North America, so and went back to Sweden for a few years. So he wouldn't be completely needing that usual time that a foreign player would have to take to adjust to the North American game. But he does. I think he's going to get the exposure of playing against men in the Swedish league and not have the possibility of being physically beaten up in the NHL. And that has to be a concern. He, like I said, he's barely 6 foot. I think he's probably around 175 to 180 pounds. And if you have to go to the dirty areas, that probably is not big enough. So we'll see what happens. It's going to be an interesting couple weeks to watch him and Kessler play together, or tonight it's going to be him and Kadri playing together. So
this is Nylander's goal, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Watch.
Here you can see it, get a better view of it here.
Yeah, and you also have to take into consideration that this was the same team that played in London for the Flyers. It was the same split squad that played in London the night before. It was a 1-0 game until the third period, and then they gave up 3 goals in the third. So
he Peter Forsberg that, didn't he?
Yeah, it was a little backhand off the rebound.
Yeah, that was that wide Peter Forsberg play. Nice goal.
Got a lot of skill. He's got a lot of speed and a lot of skill. Josh, you got some more injury news?
Yes, I do. Not as serious or as big of a name, but the Sabres defenseman Mark Basayak will be out 1 to 2 weeks with an upper body injury that was suffered in a preseason game last night. Also, something to look into, Eck. Apparently, the Blackhawks are having a full practice minus Chris Versteeg. He is not on the ice.
Imagine that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean,
everyone else is except him and Joakim Nordstrom, who's got an upper body injury.
Yeah, I think Versteeg could be headed to Carolina. I talked to people last night. We're really pretty adamant about how quickly that got together. And how quickly started. It's rare to hear a rumor that fast. And this was literally probably only 2 or 3 hours after the goal. So yeah.
Yeah, and with Stahl's injury, he'll be put on long-term injury, so that will bury his contract. And Versteeg, if you remember, he's only being paid half of the amount on the cap by the Hawks because the half of it was paid by the Florida Panthers when he was traded last year. So it'll only be around a $2 million cap hit for either the Hawks or the Hurricanes if he does get traded to the Canes.
Yeah. No, it makes sense, and I never really quite got Chicago making the deal for him in the first place, to be honest. I was really kind of critical. I got into a Twitter debate.
Florida paid for part of most of his salary.
Yeah, but even then, there were certain, I'm not a Versteeg fan. Early in his career, he definitely showed incredible promise. He was a big part of them winning their first cup. No question about it. But since then, he came to Philadelphia. He was here. He was very lackadaisical, and his work ethic was really questionable.
Well, I mean that's what I think was at work. I mean, he did fit in well with that Hawks team, and maybe they thought that they could recapture some of the magic because when he was traded to Toronto, he did the same thing. He was one night he was fantastic. The next night he was a disappearing act. And they got a first-round pick from Philadelphia for Versteeg. So
I know. It was a trade I never understood. I mean, Versteeg did kill the Flyers a couple times when he was a Chicago Blackhawk, and he had obvious talent, but he just had that other thing that you've seen in too many players, where he just doesn't. He only plays at that high level, 10% of the time. When he does, it's spectacular, but when he's not playing there, that's a problem. We have some more Ryan Johansson news a little bit. I'll get into. I think that the wheels are in motion here to get something done. Although I also feel as if it from what I'm being told, and I don't want to get too specific. This comes from a Western Canadian source, by the way, who really is pretty convinced that this situation will be handled, but it might not be handled in the way that we expect. So we'll see. What I'm hearing so far, though, is that there's no way, like as was reported yesterday, that this $9 million over 2 years was only $6 million in the second year, and we've discussed before. And what it baffles my mind that more reporters don't seem to get this. I wrote it out yesterday, and people were like, "What does that mean?" That the second year of a deal like that matters because of the way a team has to qualify him afterwards. It matters a whole lot.
Well, yes and no. You got to remember with Colorado, what they did with Ryan O'Reilly, they elected for team elected arbitration, which meant that they could have paid him less than $6.5 million. I mean, he was a $6 million cap hit in the final year of the deal. If they would have just qualified him like they normally would have, it would have been 6.5. But
right. I get that, but this is the thing. None of that is good. Like, think about what you just said there. What had happened there? They have a player here who we would think would win on their team, Ryan O'Reilly, and they're taking to arbitration to try to pay him less.
Right. Well, I mean, I agree, but and I've been of the opinion that Ryan O'Reilly and the Colorado Avalanche is not a marriage that's going to last. And based on what's going on right now with Ryan Johansson and the Columbus Blue Jackets, it's not a marriage that's going to last because the philosophy of how much they believe they should be paying Ryan Johansson and how much Johansson wants from the Jackets are two completely different things. And I think Ryan O'Reilly in a couple years is going to be someplace else because he thinks he should be paid more than Matt Duchene.
Right. And right now we're at that critical point with Johansson where it could be salvaged still. I don't think it's beyond reason that we could suddenly see a deal that keeps him there and everybody's happy for the rest of the time. Where with Ryan O'Reilly, I feel like we've gone over that cliff. And I feel like, and that's where you're right. I don't think Ryan O'Reilly will remain there. So if you're in a situation where you're paying Johansson $6 million in the second year of a 2-year deal, and you got to either qualify him at that or take him to arbitration and try to then pay him $5 or $4 million, you're getting nothing but an unhappy player. You're getting an unhappy situation. You're looking like jerks because you're lowering his salary. It really just puts the team in a bad spot all around. And so it's funny because it's such a basic thing, and this deal definitely leaked out. This 2-year deal leaked out from Johansson's side, right? Not the Blue Jackets side, which is also interesting because that means that I've always said this: rumors don't happen without agendas. That's how my job is basically about trying to interpret agendas. So when you look at a rumor coming out like that, you have to say, why do they want it out there? Well, they want it out there because they came down to $4.5 million a year. I mean, remember they were asking for $7.5 million for 4 years a year and $6.5 million for 2 years. So they came down $2 million. We've made this great bold move. So, but they didn't. Then of course the devil in the details comes out that the second year is almost $6 million. I mean, this is not a big move, and it's almost like you're trying to pull a fast one. It's almost just a PR move, right? Because they knew that the Blue Jackets weren't going to take that deal. So it's really not a negotiation. You know what I mean? It's not there yet.
Right, and the longer this goes, the more acrimonious it becomes. And I don't know. See, I don't think the agent would be doing this if the player wasn't on board with this. I think that you have the spin out there from John Davidson, who was last week was saying we think Ryan is a great young kid, and I'm sure he is, but the agent wouldn't be going out on a limb here to try to get this kind of money if the player didn't believe that he deserved that kind of money and was on board with this tactic. So, I think this is going to continue on unless the Blue Jackets, who have, I believe, $14 million in cap room, unless they step to the plate and give him what he thinks is relatively close to what he deserves. I kept saying $4 million a year. Right now, to me, $4 million a year would solve all the problems, but who knows what's going to end up happening.
I don't think they would take that, from what I've heard at least. And I think it would. The Blue Jackets would probably go there, but they, if right now maybe they would go there. But the further this gets, the uglier it gets. Maybe they don't go there. This is a weird spot right now, and at some point this will get resolved. But I think it's interesting how people were saying suddenly, "Oh, this is definitely going to get resolved now that this other counteroffer has come in," because it really didn't do anything. It really wasn't an offer to help out in that situation. And when you look forward at the players the Blue Jackets have to sign next year and the year after that, you realize why they have to be this way. They're the youngest team in the NHL right now. They've got a ton of players on entry-level contracts.
Mm-hmm.
This is not an easy situation, and they can't set a precedent with Ryan Johansson right now to give away $6 million contracts. They're stuck, and he hasn't earned it yet. So, yeah, it's a tough spot. It's a really tough spot.
Yeah.
Another rumor I was following was the Boston Bruins and the New York Islanders talking. Now, a little bit of background on this. The Bruins, we all remember that they have to make cap space. They've got Ryan O'Reilly. They've got Torrey Krug not signed yet. Now, I've heard two very different stories about each of those players. Torrey Krug is not close to signing, and in fact, that's definitely a bone of contention right now. I believe Ryan O'Reilly is one of those situations where they have figured it out. Riley Smith, sorry, not Ryan O'Reilly. Riley Smith, I apologize. Too many Ryans. Riley Smith, yes. Riley Smith is closer to signing in Boston, and perhaps even has some sort of deal figured out once they clear the cap space. It's possible now the Islanders, who are very much looking for, at this point they're looking for defensive help. Still, they've been looking for defensive help since they were talking to the Leafs about Phaneuf. They are perhaps going to, perhaps moving Torrey Krug to the Island is what I heard could happen, and that could just be a straight up move where they give Krug a chance to talk to the Islanders and say, okay, you go ahead and talk to him, see if you can make a deal there, and the Islanders apparently like Krug, so.
Well, their back end is not the best. They got a lot of inexperience, and Lubomir Visnovsky can't stay healthy. Another guy that has had injury issues over the last couple of years. Back there, they have Hamonic, they have Calvin DeHaan, who I know they were expecting a lot out of, and they also have T.J. Brennan there. I heard they might give him a shot as well, who was with the Marlies last year.
Yeah, but T.J. Brennan at best is a 6th or 7th defenseman in the NHL. I mean, he did win the AHL version of the Norris Trophy last year, had a really good season, and I'm glad he's getting a shot. But he's never shown that he can be anything more than a bottom-pairing defenseman who can play the power play. This is the failing of Garth Snow as a general manager. Anybody who looked at this damn roster during this summer knew that they needed to improve on defense, and he went out and he spent $9 million on Mikhail Grabovski and Nikolai Kulemin, which is the ultimate in stupidity. Now, the one thing that I think is in the advantage for Snow here is that he has some young prospect players that he might be able to flip for Krug if this is the direction that they're going. A guy like Ryan Strome, who's a first-round pick, a top 5 pick, who's a forward who could maybe fit in with the Bruins. He's on his entry-level deal. He's making less than $1 million. If they add that kind of guy for a Krug who probably wants a contract in the neighborhood of $2.5, maybe $3 million a year on a bridge deal, that makes sense. They get a prospect and they get rid of a contractual problem. But Krug fit in pretty well with them. I would be surprised if they trade him. I keep going back to the Boychuk possibility of them moving him, but maybe they're just not getting enough feedback, enough talent back for Boychuk.
Well, yeah, when they're in an interesting spot where they have so much depth there at this point, and they're looking around and saying, okay, well, what if we have to move something? Which they want to get something, and Krug brings them back way more than Boychuk does, and that's the reality of it is. So they can still survive very well, and perhaps get a defenseman who can actually fill in when Boychuk doesn't play anymore. They're looking down the line definitely in this situation, and they should, because they have the depth to do that. So I think it's not a bad idea. And the Islanders definitely have really like Torrey Krug, so just keep an eye on that for sure. Like I was talking about before, the situation going on in Phoenix with Max Domi was what I was kind of talking about. And interesting Pierre LeBrun article regarding this, where Don Maloney was quoted, and this is what he said: "It's hard to imagine any NHL GM would argue against adding additional flexibility to the current CHL rule." Well, the CHL rule is the rule, where you have to send a guy who got junior eligibility back to the juniors as opposed to going to the AHL, which is where Max Domi is. He says, "So we all understand top junior players are valuable assets for their junior clubs. However, for an elite junior player who has played 3 full CHL seasons, in Max Domi's case, 3 straight Memorial Cup appearances, the option to place the player, perhaps restricted to 1 player per club or something, in the AHL would be invaluable to us and a real benefit to the player's development." And I agree with him here. I mean, it's hard to disagree with this. I understand the NHL has been incredibly supportive of junior hockey for good reason. Like Canadian junior hockey feeds them players and is a huge benefit to them. As and a lot of people at college hockey, will tell you flat out that they wish the NHL would be, nicer to college hockey because it's doing the same thing now. But juniors, there's a long-standing relationship, and junior hockey, for us in America, don't realize. Like Josh, like you would probably, like how big junior hockey actually is in Canada.
Yeah.
It's a whole professional league within itself.
Yeah.
Correct. So, I mean, to me, I think that the NHL's right in sending these guys back when you can. But if you do play 3 years, I mean, playing 4 years on a junior team, if you're an elite player like this, it feels sort of ridiculous.
At a certain point, they've learned all that they can learn.
Yeah.
They've done all that they can do at the OHL or CHL or Quebec Major Junior or Western Hockey League at that level. He's 19. He doesn't turn 20 until March the 2nd. So that's their dilemma. He cannot be sent back to their AHL team. He either has to go back to London. And, he scored 93 points last year with London. He really has nothing left to learn. Maybe he's not ready for the NHL yet, but they're stuck. I mean, the Leafs were stuck last year with Morgan Rielly. Morgan Rielly was 19 years old. He was either going back to Moose Jaw or making the Leafs. There was no going to the Marlies. And he ended up staying with the Leafs. And, it worked out fine for them. But, I mean, in this instance, maybe Phoenix is better keeping him in the NHL, playing him in a limited role, and having him slowly, ingratiate himself to the NHL, because that's the rule right now. But I do agree there should be some exception and some flexibility. It also, Mikhail Grigorenko with the Sabres was also another one that sort of screwed with him, because he probably would have benefited from going to the AHL.
Was Max Domi an exception player, like in that he was allowed to enter juniors early? Is that what's happening here too?
No, he was not exceptional.
He was not? Okay.
No, he was 16 when he started with London.
He's just as
3 assists. He had 3 assists and the shootout winner the other night. So.
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine a team like Phoenix sending him back. Like really, they can use him. Obviously, it's an exciting young player. And I don't think even a quote from Maloney like this essentially is, if you read between the lines, if I was told this by a GM, I would think that they weren't sending him back, that they were keeping him, and that that basically they were just saying it would be a good thing to think about in the future, because where we were in a different situation than this one, or a different team or a different kind of player, it would be good to be able to do this. But I don't think Domi's going back to the OHL or the CHL. Case.
I mean, there has to be a little more flexibility given to these NHL organizations. I mean, if you look at what happens in the AHL, once their season in junior is done, then they can sign AHL or PTO contracts and play in the AHL for the rest of the year, and that happens all the time. Last year with the Marlies, a lot of the OHL leading scorer Connor Brown signed, who was played with Connor McDavid in Erie, signed with the Marlies, played with them the last few games of the year. I think he got into 1 or 2 playoff games. I believe he was 19 years old at that point. He's 20 now. I mean, it's not. I don't think for certain players it's not a detriment for them to go to the American Hockey League and play as a professional. There should be a little more flexibility given, but right now it's sort of black and white. If you're 19, It's not, and it's not a European player like a William Nylander who's not contractually obligated to a team in Europe. If you're 19, if you're 20 or younger, if you're under 20 years old, you can't play in the AHL, and I think that's wrong.
I think it is too, especially since you can't play in the NHL. It doesn't make any sense really. It's more or less just a certain. It is just a hat tip to the Canadian junior leagues, and while I get that, I think. I don't know. I don't think it's necessary. Now, did you guys see the Ryan Spooner goal last night? In leaving, I wanted to show you guys this. Speaking of young, up-and-coming players here, right? Ryan Spooner, man, the Bruins just have a ridiculous amount of talent. They just, it's just crazy. Check this out. Here we go. I'll show it here. I think this should play. Still trying to figure out which one will play and which one won't. So that's this one here. Sorry about that. But this Ryan Spooner, I'll definitely figure this out one day, guys. Here we go. This is, Ryan Spooner just took this, just basically steals the puck and just took it to the net straight up and scores. It's just a no-nonsense goal. Obviously, kid's got crazy talent. Bad defense, but still crazy talent.
Yeah, he scored at almost a point a game pace in the American Hockey League X. So he's on the verge, and they do have some young players that played for Providence last year that I think will push for jobs. And that's a tip of the hat to to that organization, and they just keep bringing them up.
Well, it doesn't hurt when you're winning, and when you're winning in the NHL, you can let players stay in the AHL longer and develop, and that's what it trickles down, there's no question about it. It's a trickle down effect, and this is what we're seeing. When you see teams like the Marlies who've been successful for many years, a lot of that has to do with the fact that the Leafs have been relatively patient with players over the last couple of years.
And that patience, it's the Detroit model. That's what they've been doing the last few years. They've let their players sort of overcook in the AHL, and then when they come up, they're 21 or 22, and they're ready for the show. And that's one thing that Brian Burke did, and I think a lot of people should tip their hat to Brian Burke. Is he drafted fairly well, and he kept these kids down in the minors and let them play. And now you've got maybe 3 or 4 guys who are on the verge of pressing for jobs, and before that, the Marlies were a disaster zone.
Yeah, and that's been a big thing, and I couldn't agree more. And this is, you can see this playing out in front of your own eyes. I really, it's funny, last night watching, not transitioning to Luke Shen for a second, watching, Luke Shen and Michael Del Zotto had a rough night on defense. They were, I think, each a -3 in the game, and that I wouldn't say that you would ever see them paired together in a regular game.
Luke Shen just loves the Air Canada Center, doesn't he?
Oh my gosh, yeah. It's unfortunate because the kid has talent, no question about it, and but nothing yet. Oof, jeez. It's frustrating because at times he shows ridiculous talent, but there's still something missing in his game. There's a step missing in his game. He really, too much was brought in too early. It's a perfect example of defensemen taking time to develop, and I still think Luke Shen could be a great player in this league, and I still think that the Flyers trade with the Leafs for Van Riemsdyk for Shen, while right now it still looks very one-sided because Van Riemsdyk is paying dividends right now. It's a hard trade to determine because we haven't seen Luke Shen for a couple more years, but you definitely need to take your time, and we've seen that some teams being able to take their time here. So anyway, we have anything else, Josh, for us today?
No, doesn't look like it. I think that's it for news today, at least from the hockey point of view.
Well, the hospital will be happy then.
Yes, Connor McDavid has been named captain of the Erie Otters, for what it's worth. I don't think that's a big shock. And so that, and we will. But that's all the time we have for today. Oh, I got one more I got a good hit here. I don't know if you saw this, guys. This was a good one. Actually, forget it. They've got an advertisement, so I'm not going to show it to you. But you got to check out the Michael McCarron hit on Kevin Millar last night. Quite a hit indeed.
Kevin Millar?
Kevin Miller. Sorry, Kevin Miller.
Actually, I do have one thing I want to bring up, and
I
you
mean,
know, we've been talking a lot about Ryan Johansson the last couple of days, but we still haven't heard anything about what's going on with Schwartz in St. Louis. That's another big one, I think. I think he could have been, or, you know, I think a big impact from him this year would happen, but right now, looks like they're pretty far apart as well.
from what I'm told, it's getting closer. It's only a couple 100,000 apart now. But you know, so I sort of do believe that this will get done. I don't, you know if it's going to get done, you know, within the week, but I think it'll get done before the season. Here's the hit on Miller last night, Kevin Miller. Sorry. Here we go. So yeah, this is in the same game. Oh, shoot, what the heck? Well, that doesn't help. Sorry.
You'll just have to imagine it, folks.
Try it again. Here we go. One more time. I think here it comes. There's the hit. So, tough kid, man. Michael McCarron, tough kid. Good player. Good player. And, you know, some size for the Canadians, which they desperately need. So, you know, that was I think they're going to be close. I think they're going to get close. I think they're going to get close with Schwartz, though. Getting back to that, but I guess that's all the time we have for today, guys. And we really appreciate you joining us in the chat room. We'll be back tomorrow with Ryan Garner from Jamaica joining us, and we will talk to you soon. Enjoy the games tonight. I think there's only one game tonight, actually, which is, you know, kind of crazy, right? I think there's only one NHL game tonight. After there was so many.
There's the Leafs and the Senators are split squatting.
Oh, okay, so that's right. I saw your article that they were playing in stereo tonight. I like that.
Yeah. The Battle of Ontario in stereo. Yes.
Battle of Ontario in stereo. Yes, the split squads continue, and they'll end soon, and we'll get to see real players playing against each other, real NHLers playing against each other soon enough. I mean, I just in closing, I mean, isn't the NHL preseason just too long? It really feels crazy long.
Well, look at all the injuries, Zach.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and you know what, Ak, I think the coaches think the same. I mean, the Leafs are playing 8 games in I think 13 or 14 days, and I know in talking to our mutual friend Russ Cohen last night.
Yeah.
Did his podcast. He said that when talking to Craig Berube sort of, you know, just rolled his eyes at how many preseason games teams are playing. You can't keep track of them all. It's just too much.
And you have the rookie games.
Yeah, you see, I think the NHL needs to start this season the third week of September. Like, I think that, the fact that we go to June in the first place is sort of ridiculous. So why don't we just start have 2 or 3 preseason games over the course of 1 week in September, and then just start the season up and end this thing before June. I mean, it's like the fact that there's sometimes 2 weeks between, you know, the Stanley Cup being raised and the draft is just insane. I mean, this whole thing is gotten, you know, there's no reason not to. I know the old reason was you don't want to compete with the NFL, but the NFL starts earlier now, so that should be gone. And now, and you're going to compete with baseball because baseball runs later, so you can't get around that, right?
Between rookie tournaments and preseason, the training camp, if you consider that all training camp, it lasts almost a month. That is too much.
Yeah, it's just too much. We don't need it. There's no reason. It feels like when we should be starting the season now. Why wait? Why are we waiting till October 8th? Is it?
Yeah.
I mean, it seems absurd. Like, why are we not starting October 1st at least? I mean, it's kind of crazy. Why is that week? But anyway, we're gonna go till June.
2 weeks today, guys. 2 weeks today.
2 weeks today. There we go. All right, guys. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We will talk to you soon. Thanks for watching.